Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica and our continuing series on the Sega Saturn. Today we're taking a look at Deep Fear, released in 1998 by Sega. It is one of the last games ever to launch, and it never actually came to the US market. It is a PAL and Japanese exclusive release, and it is an amazing game. Yes, it's a Resident Evil ripoff. All the games that weren't Resident Evil back then were, but the storyline and the setting and how it plays is so unique that it definitely is only a Resident Evil clone as far as the camera angles and how the game plays is concerned. But as far as the story, the setting, they're all wholly unique in Sega's take on survival horror. And I do love this little intro cutscene. It gives you just enough flavor text to kind of understand what might be going on in the world, but not so much that it's really going to spoil the surprise for you. I do love that Deep Fear logo as well. It has this really nice artistic flair in that blue kind of ocean color. And I will say, I'm really only showing you guys the beginning areas of this game because it's quite long and it's definitely complex. And I don't really want to spoil much because this is a game that I really don't hear talked about that often at all. So I don't want to give you a lot of the big story elements to it. I kind of want to just tease out enough interest, though, even if a handful of people see this and decide that they want to look for the game themselves and play it, that'll make me definitely happy. As far as the voice acting is concerned, it's bad, even for 90s standards. It's kind of become a meme. One of the characters in the game has a very interesting voice, which is probably at this point problematic, but it was in the 90s and that's what they did. And we kind of have to look at it through that lens of when it came out. But it definitely gets talked about a lot for how bad the voices are, but not so much as how good the game actually is. And that's what I really want to bring to the table here, is telling you guys that if you want a good survival horror game that you haven't played before, and you have a Saturn, Deep Fear is definitely an awesome option. And I am playing the Japanese version, and I will say, I have had this copy since I bought it in 1998. EB Games was selling imported Japanese Saturn games because the market had fallen apart so much in North America. It was really all they had to sell. And it's the only Saturn game I never traded in because no one would accept Japanese games for trade after they stopped selling them. So I had it in my collection, and when I finally got a Saturn back again years later, it was the first game I had for it. And that's just kind of the history of the lineage of this copy. And I will say that even though it is in Japanese, 90% of the text is in English and all the voice acting is in English. So you're definitely going to be able to play the game from start to finish with no huge issues. And if you get stuck at something, there's plenty of walkthroughs online that'll get you around that, because the PAL copy is going to be very expensive. The Japanese copy, maybe $20. And you'll see here that we're getting into this little cutscene, and the crew that we deal with are maybe playing a little bit of a prank on us. And the game definitely opens up slower than most games. I mean, in the original Resident Evil, you went from getting into the mansion to having your first combat within a couple of minutes if you chose the right doors, where Deep Fear definitely is a more slow burn and gives you maybe 10 to 15 minutes of gameplay and story to get you to the inciting incident of what's actually going to happen, which is going to be this right here. I'll let you watch the cutscene and I'll come back and keep talking, but get some of the dialogue.
System off.
Seafox, play ball. This time Mermaid may be waiting for you.
Yeah, I wish. If only they were real mermaids.
Yeah, definitely.
What was that? Hey, stop!
So now we know a little bit more about what's happening, what's kind of setting off the entire game. We're going to get into a little bit more of the gameplay. But even now, it's still going to go a little slow. We have to go to the meeting room, we have to be given a key, and we kind of have to be introduced to what our first mission is, because you're going to be transitioning between different areas in the game. And as you'll see soon, one of the big mechanics is oxygen levels, because we are underwater, and some of the damage to that Navy area breaches the hull, and you're not just fighting against enemies and trying to solve puzzles, you're also trying to do oxygen management. So the resource management component of the game adds a layer over Resident Evil. You're not just dealing with your health and with your ammo, you're also dealing with your air supply, and that can be quite interesting and intriguing as far as a mechanic is concerned. But now we're going to get a little more information on what our mission is, and you're going to see that there's a character in all pink, well, kind of purple, pink, purple, whatever, and his voice is quite affected in a way that maybe was funny in the 90s, but now is kind of just maybe passe or not something that we would think of and do. And as opposed to bringing too much emphasis and letting you listen to it, I'll just say that it's a bit problematic. It doesn't age well. You know, all 90s voice acting was bad, but some of it was a little bit stereotypical, so your mileage may vary. It doesn't bother me so much, but it's definitely something that doesn't feel right or funny anymore, even if it probably wasn't funny in the 90s. It definitely isn't now, but you get enough information to kind of drive the story forward, and all the characters are interesting enough for that kind of 90s voice acted dialogue era. And if you can get past the slow opening of this game, it definitely opens up and it gives you a ton to do. Combat's interesting, how you draw your gun and how you fire it in real time. And some of the items you actually don't have to go into a menu and use. It gives you some real time item use, and it kind of builds on the classic Resident Evil formula and kind of enhances it. But the game just didn't really get treated that fairly on release. I mean, it didn't come out in North America, so maybe you never even heard of it. But it definitely got that Resident Evil clone title hung around its neck, just the same way that pretty much every first-person shooter game after Doom was just called a Doom clone, because whoever did it best or first kind of ends up everything's a clone after that, when in reality there's so many different survival horror games on all these platforms, and Deep Fear is one of the best ones that isn't Resident Evil, and definitely one that you should check out. And I do love these, little CGI cutscenes. You're going to see how the monsters evolve and what you're really looking at. And it's definitely a little bit of a nod to the original Resident Evil when you have that zombie eating a victim and he turns his head. It's like a more stylized version of that, as you can see the mutation occurring in front of you. And the monster designs in the game are absolutely awesome. They're Resident Evil level good. And I like how Mookie there kind of just shimmies to the side and gets out of there. His character's quintessential coward. He's the technician. He doesn't want to fight. But now we have our first bit of combat, and it's definitely survival horror-y, but you draw your gun with the right trigger button, and then you hit the A button to be able to shoot. So there's definitely an interesting mechanic in that, and it feels really good. And as you go on, you'll see now our screen's flashing because we only have 19 seconds of oxygen left in that area, and now we're getting into a situation where the oxygen levels are going to become more of an issue. And there's going to be certain areas in the game right here you're almost out of oxygen immediately, and that air supply is going to go down. And if it goes too far, you're going to start taking hit points, and your health is going to go down. You have switches on the walls where you can increase the oxygen levels. You have oxygen tanks that you can put in your mouth to be able to go into certain areas. But you'll see we left and entered the room again, and we're running out of air. And it definitely keeps track of that as you go back and forth. The air doesn't always restore itself. And as you come into this room right here, you're going to see right off the top, we are out of oxygen, so we have to run quickly. And it gives the game more of a frantic pace, because in Resident Evil, if you eliminated all the zombies from a room, you could just stand there and nothing would happen, nothing would push you forward. But in Deep Fear, with that oxygen meter, you're always moving through these areas, and there's fear even when there's not an enemy in front of you, because that oxygen asset management is always going to be a thing you have to deal with. And like I said, I'm really only showing you the very intro to this game, a little bit of combat, a little bit of story, just to get you more interested in wanting to play Deep Fear. It's a 2-disc game. There's a ton more after this. We're able to basically beat this first area here. We almost die, and that was unfortunate. And it is challenging. It's not too hard. It's not too easy, but it feels like an accomplishment every time you're able to kill an enemy or complete an area of the game. And it's got a really safe, fun save feature, so you're not going to get beaten too far back. But you'll see here, as we get the key card out of our menu, we almost run out of hit points because those are constantly going down as the air is gone in the room. And it's just something you need to worry about, and it's something that I do appreciate. But definitely play it. I highly recommend it. It might not be the best survival horror game ever. It might be like one tier under Resident Evil, but I love the underwater setting. I kind of love everything the game's doing. And since we didn't get a ton of survival horror on the Saturn, if you're looking for a new experience to have, definitely pick it up because it's exclusive to the Saturn. You're not going to play it on any other platform, and it's definitely going to be worth your time and energy completing it. And now we're going to basically move part of the Navy area to the main underwater lab, and the story is going to continue from there. But that is Deep Fear. I 100% recommend pick it up, grab a Japanese copy, play through it, have a walkthrough handy in case you get any issues with, translation. But like I said, for the most part, you're going to be able to play the game from start to finish in Japanese with no huge issues. You might get lost here or there, but it's not going to beat you up too bad to the point where you're ready to put it down compared to a lot of other Japanese games that you might import and play. But if you could do us a huge favor, go down below and hit like and subscribe. Definitely helps us out. It takes a lot of time and energy to make each one of these episodes, and we really appreciate your guys' support. We will be back next Tuesday, another episode in our Sega Saturn series, and we'll also be back on Friday and Monday with other videos as well. And there's also a monkey, because that's a thing. He's underwater, and you'll just have to deal with it, because you'll find out later why the monkey's important. But now we're moving the Navy area to the main area, and the rest of the game will continue. And if you decide to pick it up and play it, you'll find out what happens. But thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.